On today's show, we are joined by Todd Palmer, who is the retired CEO of one of America's fastest 5,000 growing businesses. And he joins us to share why it's very important to define what success means to you. Ladies and gentlemen, now without any further ado, our interview with Todd Palmer.
Some shows don't need a celebrity narrator to introduce the show, but this show does. 2 men, 8 kids, co-created by 2 different women, 13 multi-million-dollar businesses. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Thrive Time Show.
3, 2, 1, here we go!
Started from the bottom, now we here. Started from the bottom, and we'll show you how to get here. Started from the bottom, now we here. Started from the bottom, now we here. Started from the bottom, now we here.
Yes, 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 and yes. Thrive Nation, welcome back to another exciting edition of the Thrive Time Show on your radio and podcast download. And on today's show, we have a guy with a last name that I like. For some reason, I like the last name Palmer. I love the first name Todd. Ladies and gentlemen, Todd Palmer, welcome onto the show. How are you, sir?
I am excellent. Thanks for having me here today. It's great to be here.
Now, Todd, you're sort of a big deal now. You've done well as an executive coach and as an author, and you've had massive success. But I would love for you just to, start off at the bottom and kind of share about your childhood and what it was like growing up, just so we kind of get to know you a little bit.
Absolutely. So it's interesting that I've grew up on a small farm in mid-Michigan. I had 42 kids in my graduating class. And I remember my very first entrepreneurial venture actually was in grade school, probably around 6th grade or so. We had one general store in town, and my mom would take me to school, and we'd stop by there, and I'd buy gum and candy for a nickel or a dime a piece, and I'd go to school, and I'd upsell it for a quarter. Principal brings me into the office, chews me out for my entrepreneurial bent, saying it's unfair of me to take advantage of kids who don't have the same opportunity I do of being driven to school. And fast forward, 35 years later, I'm being an entrepreneur, doing exactly what my teacher told me I shouldn't do.
I know that if you're out there and you're saying, Clay, why do you always rip on teachers? Why? Well, because I just have so many stories that are. This one just happened this morning here, Todd. This is a funny story. One of my clients we work with, this guy has a fitness center. It's like a one-on-one gym that's not in Oklahoma. Okay, so I won't divulge the name of it. One of his clients shows up today, and he is a principal. He's a principal of a school, and he shows up late and refuses to put in the effort. Todd, the guy who signs up for personal training but doesn't actually show up. You're paying but not showing up. And so I guess the trainer, said to the guy, the owner of the business, said, "Hey man, you got to man up." And the principal says, "You're going to use that kind of language? That's hurtful language. I talk to my kids about that all the time. You're to imply that only a man can man up. To imply that only a man can, step up, and just the phrase man up, that is very offensive, And so the trainer's like, "So do you want to keep working out or what's it? No, I cannot work out, but I'm going to be harassed like this." I just see it. It's like it's almost like the world that's taught in school, Todd, is totally different than the world of entrepreneurship, isn't it? It's like totally different.
Well, school's about rules. School's about being an application for the masses. And if you take that construct into the world of entrepreneurship's about breaking the rules. Entrepreneurship is not about the masses. Entrepreneurship is a win-lose game. Not everybody gets a ribbon. Not everybody gets a trophy. There's no Rice Krispie treat and orange slice at the end of the day as an entrepreneur.
So true. That is hot. That right there. I'm gonna just take that audio, transcribe that audio, put that on a shirt, and then say, "Holy cow!" That's hot. Wow.
Hey, if Harry Carey likes it, it's good enough for me.
I'll tell you what. I'm gonna have to get a little cowbell here. Okay, I'm back. Okay, now, so let's get into this. Your career. When did you start to gain some traction? Were you, did you hit your head on a toilet seat and bam, you drew the flex capacitor, or what happened?
Well, the traction really started early on. It started the company in 1997. By day 72, by hook or crook, we were actually profitable. And what that gave me was a real sense of success and a real false sense of how smart I thought I was versus how smart I really wasn't. By 2006, I was $600,000 in debt.
That's sweet.
I was 60 days away from running out of money.
Oof.
My house was on the line. I was a single parent. My kids looking at me like, "What the heck are you doing?" And I had to make some difficult choices. So I walked in on September 9th, 2006, fired my entire company, and started over. So then we made the Inc. 5000, 6 out of the next 7 years, and that's when we finally got some traction.
What business did you first start? That was what kind of industry, or what was the business?
The business was a recruiting company, Metro Detroit. We specialized in general labor, day labor for the manufacturing sector. And we thought, we've got a new mousetrap. We would drive people to work.
Yeah.
We owned a transportation company as well. And we thought we were just going to take Kelly Services and Manpower right out. And they made it very clear very quickly that they will simply bury us if we try to compete in the space that they were in.
So what do you do now? What does the company do now? Is it still do staffing?
Yeah, so the company Diversified Industrial Staffing still exists. I'm a retired CEO. I still own the business, but I don't work in it on a day-to-day basis any longer. And our specialty niche is we provide skilled trades, highly trained machinists, welders, high-end C-level manufacturing talent all around the country on a direct hire model. And with the 2 million jobs in the manufacturing space being open on a daily basis, we've got an increased demand and a diminished supply. So if we can find that right person, we're able to get them a job relatively quickly, moving them from, essentially from one fully placed position to another, and we simply just broker that deal.
And for people that aren't familiar with, how your industry gets paid, how you get paid. I work with a lot of staffing companies, but can you explain how you get paid? Like, let's just say that I'm trying to hire a machinist, my company is, and you help find the machinist. How do you get paid? How do the mechanics work?
It's really simple. We work for the candidate, for the machinist in this example. We work for him or her for free. There's no fee paid to us. All of our fees are employer paid, and we simply get a percentage of their annual income. And we actually offer a unique program called No Risk Direct Hire. So we finance those payment terms over a 3-month cycle. It's similar to leasing a car versus buying a car. It gives the client a sense of control over their spend. And if somebody doesn't work out within the first 90 days, the faucet turns off. There's no longer any fees incurred, and we simply don't have to replace the person if it's an unreplaceable situation, which we find a lot in today's world because there's just the average American welder is 62 years old. There's not a lot of these people out there anymore.
Now, when you say you hire C-level employees, are you talking about like chief executive officers and chief, operating officers and chief financial officers, or are you talking about people like me that are like C-level talent when it comes to playing the cowbell?
Well, if there was a cowbell manufacturer who wanted to hire you, I think it would basically come down to you, Will Ferrell, and Christopher Walken to see who's going to get that job. We have faith in you, Clay, that you can make that happen.
I've really been practicing. Sometimes I'm on beat.
There you go. But for the people we place in the manufacturing space, typically it's going to be a plant manager who's a C-level person, someone who's a CFO with manufacturing experience, a COO. So we've done some presidents. We work a lot with second-generation companies who the owners left, the children are now in charge, and they really need that manufacturing expertise to come in from the outside, and they'll contact us to help them out.
When you restarted the company, how'd you go about getting the first 100 customers? Did you cold call? Did you do some megaphone marketing? What'd you do?
To get those after we restarted, it was really challenging because we started in September of 06. We didn't know it, but the recession was already in full play. It was just sitting beneath the surface. So we did a lot of cold calling. The people I had gotten rid of, I replaced those with other people who didn't have that recruiting background. I found that to hire for DNA versus resume was a really strong recipe. We brought in people from the restaurant space, from hospitality. Even we had one person came in from the medical space to become recruiters. And we just did a really simple methodology of calling companies, asking them what they wanted to hire. They said, no, it's a recession. We don't need to hire anybody. So if you're going to hire somebody and you had to hire somebody, what category would they fit into? And the marketplace kept telling us they needed those high-level people. Then the spin became, well, if I did find that person, could you take them tomorrow? I said, absolutely. We'll make space in a 15% unemployment world for that person because we know we're going to need them. We can't find them, and we're willing to pay more for it. So it was that inflection point of increased demand, diminished supply. We could charge more for it, and that's actually part of the recipe of how we actually dug out of that $600,000 in debt.
Okay, now, so what mentors in your career have made the biggest impact to help you? Because obviously entrepreneurship is obviously very, very much learned by you, but it's also kind of intuitive, that mindset that made you want to sell, candy as a kid. What mentors have made the biggest impact on your life?
It's a great question because the mentors have come from a huge variety of areas. I've been fortunate for nearly 20 years to be involved with a group called the EO, the Entrepreneurs Organization.
Got it.
It's a peer-to-peer learning environment. So I've learned a lot from my peers. And the great part about it is advice is forbidden. Everything is from Gestalt Protocol Experience Share. And we share that. One of my biggest mentors early on was a guy named Vern Harnish. He wrote a book called The Rockefeller Habits. I was lucky enough to study under him. I'm in Metro Detroit, spent time with Gino Wickman, who wrote EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, learned from him. My mentors have come from a lot of different places, but I think honestly the biggest mentor I have wasn't even an entrepreneur at all. It was my older brother. He was a C-level executive out in California when I was here in Detroit, and I really learned from him the mental discipline it requires to turn a company around. So in 06, 07, 08, I leaned on him heavily as a coach to get my thinking straight, because the blocking and tackling of being an entrepreneur was easy. It was getting out of my own way and shutting down that negative committee in my head. It was telling me how much I was a failure and how much I sucked for getting in such a big hole, $600,000 in debt.
What as you kind of look at your career and you part of this EO group, I'd like for you to explain what you mean when you said that the advice is forbidden in that group. What can you explain what that means?
Absolutely. So what happens when you get advice, especially with a lot of type A personalities, a lot of egos in the room, is I gave you my advice, you didn't take it, I immediately dismiss you, and I think I'm smarter than you. What we found, especially in the EO community, and now I think we're almost 20,000 across the globe, is Gestalt Protocol, speaking from experience, resonates a whole lot more, and it creates a healthier communication dynamic. When I say to you, Clay, when I had the problem that you're experiencing, here's what I did, you can take it or leave it. You can learn from the kernels of the story of, wow, Todd did this, that worked really well. Ooh, Todd did that. Yeah, that's not going to fit within my organization. And you're able to take what you need, leave the rest behind, so that you're able to then move forward. Because a lot of the challenges come into when advice is given, it creates a sense of isolation. And the worst thing you can have is an entrepreneur alone, because an entrepreneur alone is an entrepreneur risk. EO believes that Gestalt Protocol, and speaking from experience, is the healthiest way to support everybody.
Now, you have written a book, and a lot of people talk about writing books. A lot of people say, I'm going to write a book. Freaking write a book right now. I'll tell you what I'm going to do this weekend. I'm going to write a book. And then, a lot of times we don't write a book because we get busy, So you're a fellow author. Let's talk about the job search process, the book you wrote there, Find and Land a Great Job in 6 Weeks or Less. My friend, what inspired you to write that book, and what was your process like for writing it?
So what inspired me is very much the conversation you just had right here. It's like I kept telling all my buddies, I'm going to write a book, and I don't like this and I don't like that, and I think I know this and I think I know that. And it came down to it's time to put up or shut up. So a buddy of mine bet me a decent amount of money that I couldn't write my book and I wouldn't have it out within 6 months.
Oh, that's what you need right there. Good bet.
Yeah. So it was absolutely the kick in the pants that I needed. So I wrote the book in 30 days. I did nothing but focus up on what needed to be done, because it really came from a spot of, at the time my son was in high school and a lot of his friends couldn't find a job. I was on a board of a university. A lot of those students couldn't find a job. And I felt that the education system, specifically at the university level, was really letting the kids down, because as a parent who was about to pay for his kid to go to school, I saw going to school as having two paths. One, you learn some great life experiences by being around other people, being with your peers, falling in love, falling out of love, partying too much, not partying enough. All the craziness that goes into college is fine. But I'm also seeing college as that job readiness program. I wanted my kid to have a great education, and I wanted other people's kids to have great educations, because as a recruiter, I knew the better educated our workforce was, the stronger the economy was going to be, and the stronger the hiring environment was going to be. But I found that the schools were not preparing the kids enough to be interview ready. So really, I wrote the book for people to give as graduation gifts to their kids coming out of high school or college, so they can go find their first job. And it works. Kids are finding jobs left and right in 6 weeks or less. Now, in today's economy, sometimes it's in 6 days or less, depending upon how good they are.
Now, okay, though this I'm gonna take the room down for just a second here. Just hate to talk. We got a lot of negativity out there. I hate to be the guy that brings it down, but I'm gonna allow you to bring it back up. Okay, so here we go. I write for Forbes from time to time. I know you write. You probably look at the stats. You're aware of it. But according to Forbes, 67%. Andrew, I'm sure you've seen the stat, but 67% of people want to start a business. All right, so.
Yep.
Now, Andrew, let's just say that you don't agree. Let's say that someone out there says, "Well, I don't like that stat. I don't like that stat." Let's say, okay, fine, half the people, but just say, well over half of America though wants to start a business. All right, so the majority. Now, of those people that do start a business, 9 out of 10 of the startups, according to Forbes, fail. So this is what's crazy to me, Todd. So now we only have like 1 out of 10 Americans who haven't started a business to begin with. 1 out of 10 Americans start a business, and then out of those 1 out of 10, only one of those makes it. But what I see is really sad is the chewed up, burned out, beaten, not having time freedom entrepreneur who works all the time and makes it by working 117 hours every week, but doesn't actually ever get ahead. So what I would like to speak to is the 9 out of 10 people that make it, but don't actually ever make it. You know what I mean? The guy who made it, Todd, he's not bankrupt, but he never gets time freedom. Doesn't have the time to hop on a podcast like this. Doesn't have the time to write a book like you're doing. Doesn't have time to give back. Doesn't have time for EO. Doesn't have time for going to his kids' games. Doesn't have time for anything because he's just working all the time. What advice would you give to the entrepreneur out there that made it, quote unquote? They're not bankrupt, but they're not getting ahead. What advice would you give them?
I think a couple of things. One, I think that I would challenge that entrepreneur to define what success means to them. I used to think, for my, again, using Gestalt protocol, speaking from experience, for me, success was, how many zeros can I get behind that one on my revenue line, or how much money can I get in my bank account? And I've discovered that success really is doing what I want, when I want to do it, as often as I want to do it, with whom I want to go do it with. And I'm willing to trade some money for flexibility and freedom. Now, having said that, I certainly had to figure out that the construct of work-life balance is a misnomer. It doesn't exist. What does exist is the construct of work-life integration. So there are times when, now with my coaching practice at Extraordinary Advisors, I had to work on Christmas Eve out of nowhere. I had a client that was in crisis. I got on the phone with them. I talked them off the ledge. They were able to have a great holiday with their family over the next couple of days. I had to set the expectation with the people I was spending the holiday with that, hey, this person needs me. I'm available 24/7 to my clients. I promise them that. It's my brand promise. So I have to take this call. The flip side of that is if I didn't have great clients like this, we couldn't have the great holiday we're having. So then it comes down to communicating those expectations as well. So for that entrepreneur who's struggling, figure out at the end of the day, why are you working so hard? What does success mean to you? If you're working so hard and you have this hole within you that you're trying to fill with work, you might want to think about addressing that. You might want to redefine what success means to you. And if you're only chasing the top line number of revenue, you may want to consider, are you really focused on the right number? And I argue the right number on your P&L is your bottom line. How can you goose that margin up so it's worth your time, taking away from all the people you care about?
How can you explain what a Inc. 5000 member it means for people out there that don't know what that means?
Sure. To be an Inc. 5000 company is you have to show and share your financials with Inc. magazine about your revenue growth year over year over a 3-year period. So when we made the Inc. 5000 6 out of 7 years, we essentially had a decade of strong revenue growth year over year. What the crazy thing about it is they never asked for, did you make any money? Like the question you just asked me. And the crazy thing is when you talk to the people at Inc., there are companies that grow so fast, they grow out of business because they run out of cash. And so we throttled back some of our growth some of those years. So we were still successful and made the list. But it really is, it's not a sustainable model to think you're going to make the Inc. 5000 every year that your company's open.
Eric Schmidt did an interview the other day talking about his business coach, Bill Campbell, the book, the new book, $1 Trillion Coach. Mm-hmm. He did an interview with Tim Ferriss, which I thought was fascinating. And I don't know if anybody out there's listened to it yet or heard it, but he references working 7 days a week. He just kind of, he kind of throws it out there, Todd, where he's just talking and, and he's like, yeah, we work 7 days a week and we do this. And I think it's so important you do take time out to define success, because maybe success for you is working 7 days a week and then growing the world's most valuable company.
And maybe it is. Maybe there's nothing wrong with that, as long as you bought into it. Right.
And for me, success is buying silky chickens for about $7 online. silky chickens, mostly female. I don't like the roosters, and hanging out with them and then planting trees in my backyard. That's kind of like success for me. And some people say, really, that's all you want? And, Todd, I'm sure you've been at these EO groups. You've met some sick freaks like me who've kind of hit all their goals, and all they want to do is nothing. Have you met these people, these kind of sick freaks that are kind of content?
I have met a couple of those guys. What I find those guys typically will do, though, is they will then do a lot of mentoring. They'll go back and work with the schools.
There it is.
The other guy I've met that scares me more than the chicken guy is the guy who says, once I get to $10 million in revenue, I'll be happy. Or once I get to $20 million, I'll be happy. Or once I get to they're never happy. Right. Because that whatever their beast is within inside of them doesn't become satisfied. So, again, that's why I always say, define what success means to you and go for it. So if you want to be this silky chicken guy in your neighborhood, more power to you. I
just think a lot of people, though, that I had one guy who came over to my house and he said, Clay, I wish people saw you not at work because you're different. And I'm like, how? Like, I come over here and you're petting a chicken and you don't have a phone on. But I think most people see you during the day, selling something, moving something, speaking at a conference. And I'm like, well, during the day I work. And when I'm not working, I don't work. I don't mix the two, hanging out with my kids, chasing my wife around. Todd, what's the final bit of advice that you would like to share with our listeners out there? Because you are a very intentional guy, and I'm curious about how you organize your day. But I'm sure there's maybe another piece of advice you'd like to share, maybe about how you organize your day or how you plan your day, or what's your final bit of advice you'd like to give to the Thrive Nation?
I think for the Thrive Nation, my final piece of advice would be this. Figure out why you want something. I was very fortunate. I was able to spend time with Simon Sinek when he just became, he wasn't even hot. He was lukewarm. And he helped me figure out my why. And my why is improve lives. That's all I want to do in everything that I do. So when I'm working with a client, I'm improving their lives. When I'm going through the drive-through at Starbucks to get a coffee, if I can have a conversation with the person at the window that makes their day just a little bit better, that enriches me. Those light bulb moments, that ability to connect with another fellow human being. Think about why we do what we do, not the services or products necessarily that we offer. Once you flip that switch and you see that light bulb go on with inside of yourself, that's really where the magic happens. So the work you do becomes fun, whether you're doing it 7 days a week or you're doing it, what is it, the Tim Ferriss program, 4 hours a week.
You've piqued my interest. So now that I know your why and why you're doing what you do, what time do you wake up every day, and how do you typically spend the first 4 hours of every day?
I typically wake up between 5 and 6, and the first 2 hours of the day I do my very best to get to the gym. If I don't make it to the gym, the first thing I do is I pick up a book and I read for 20 to 30 minutes. Then this is a new change in my life. My partner, my girlfriend, has a 9-year-old. I have not had a 9-year-old in my house in nearly 20 years. My son is 28, and she and I will have breakfast. And we have our own version of, her name is Etta Jane, and we have breakfast with Etta. And she tells me what's going on in her day. I tell her what's going to go on my day. We talk about what we're going to do, and then we regroup at the end of the night, later in the day, and see how our days went. That setting that platform with this young person the reports we get from her teacher are just off the charts, how much more engaged she's become, how she's focused on goals, all those little different seeds we plant. So really, I go to the gym, I come home, make sure I have 8 to 8:30 with breakfast with Etta, and I schedule my first client call at 8:35. And that's the way my day starts.
I am infinitely fascinated about you, and I also want to respect your time. So for the listeners out there that want to, learn more about you, where can they find more information about the Todd Palmer Show?
I'm really easy to find. Extraordinaryadvisors.com is my website.
Cool.
Anybody who mentions that they've heard me on the Thrive Time Show, I'm happy to give them a half hour of conversation. Just put in there that you heard me on Clay's program. Let's talk about what's going on in your world, whether it's how do you set goals, how do you get the stinking thinking out of your head, you want to grow your business and you don't have enough margin. We can talk about all those kind of things. So that's how people can find me.
Todd, I appreciate you, and I hope you have an awesome day. Thank you for your time. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to end each and every show with a boom, because boom stands for big, overwhelming, optimistic momentum. Again, I repeat, boom stands for big, overwhelming, optimistic momentum, because that's what we believe it takes to grow a successful business. And now, without any further ado, if you could bring a boom with me, that would be great. Here we go. By the way, if you could bring a boom with me while grabbing somebody else to bring a boom with you, that could be you and me. We could bring a boom for 3. Here we go. 3, 2, 1, boom.